Hello, welcome to Run Testers. My name is Nick, and in this video we're going to be comparing the Saucony Endorphin Pro 3 and the Nike Alphafly 2. Start by running through the key stats of the shoes. The Alphafly is the more expensive shoe. It's £270 in the UK, $275 in the US. The Endorphin Pro 3 is £210 in the UK and $225 in the US. They both have an 8mm drop, and the Alphafly is the heavier shoe. It weighs 244 grams or 8.6 ounces in a UK size 9. Whereas the Endorphin Pro 3 is 217 grams or 7.7 ounces. The Endorphin Pro 3 has a lightweight mesh upper, lots of holes, very fishnetty, and the tongue has big holes in it as well. You've got a little bit of cush at the back there, but not a whole lot as it's a racing shoe. You've got a Power Run PB midsole, which is Saucony's PEBA-based foam with a full-length carbon plate and Saucony's speed roll geometry to create a nice rocking effect on the run. And you've got pretty decent rubber coverage, good slab of it at the forefoot there and at the heel with midsole cutouts to reduce the weight of the shoe a little bit. Alphafly has Atom Knit 2.0, which is a structured knit upper. It's all in one piece. It's like a booty design there, and you've got quite a significant heel counter on the shoe actually to try and increase the stability of it. Obviously, you've got Zoom X foam in the midsole, Nike's PEBA-based foam. You've got mostly Zoom X foam in the midsole with some Air Zoom pods at the forefoot there to create a little bit of a firmer feel and more pop to your forefoot. And then there's Zoom X foam running underneath the pods as well on the second edition of the shoe. It's a pretty wide shoe, with stability in mind. You've got a really significant midsole cutout, which almost amounts to a decoupled midsole. And then in terms of the outsole, you've got good forefoot coverage and two strips at the back in the kind of classic Nike style to provide decent grip without adding too much weight. When it comes to the fit of the shoe, the Endorphin Pro 3 was all good in my normal size, completely true to size. I've had no problems with my foot moving around in the shoe at all on the run. The Nike's a little bit hard to get on at first, but you've got these two pull tabs, which makes it a little bit easier. And this kind of booty tongue construction, you've got to force your foot in a little bit, but once you are in, it holds the foot really well, very securely. I was completely true to size in this shoe as well. I always think with the Alphafly, be a little bit careful about going too close to the front of the toe box, because the way the rubber curls up here can cause issues to my big toe if I go half a size down. So yeah, true to size in both shoes. So the Alphafly 2 and the Endorphin Pro 3 are probably my two favourite new carbon shoes of 2022, with oldies like the Vaporfly and the original Alphafly still rivaling them. I used them a lot during my big marathon training block this year for Berlin, did a lot of races in them. I've done about 150k in the Alphafly, and I've done I think about 200k in one version of the Endorphin Pro 3 and then 50k in a new version including the London Marathon. So done lots of miles in them, really like them. They've got pretty different rides. The Alphafly is a lot more noticeable, it's fair to say. It's big, spongy, bouncy, propulsive shoe. It's like pulling like a tanker or a luxury car onto your foot and just kind of getting into cruise mode straight away, but it really can move. Like, you might feel like you're cruising, but you can run very fast in a shoe for sure. The Endorphin Pro is less noticeable. It's much smoother. It's got a little bit of bounce in it, but really it just keeps you ticking over with that speed roll geometry and the plate combining to create almost like an effortless feeling ride. It always feels to me when I'm really on it in the Endorphin Pro 3 that I'm just kissing the ground and kind of not slowing down at all as I run along, whereas the Alphafly, you're putting force into the shoe and getting a lot of bounce back from it, but yeah, it doesn't feel like you're skipping along off the surface. Both, like I say, are very fast, even kind of any distance, but the Pro certainly feels more nimble of the two. I think the one run I did where I compared these two directly, I did 4 times 5k in my local park, with the third 5k being a park run, and I did, I think, one of the earlier 5ks in the Alphafly 2. I did the park run and the last 5k in the Endorphin Pro 3, so I was going all out in the park run, around 16 dead, rounded up from 15:59, I'm sure, and then did the last 5k in the Endorphin Pro 3 with like the other 5ks in the workout being around marathon pace, and it was noticeable just how much more agile and nimble it felt to pull on the shoe compared to the Alphafly 1 and 2 I'd been using ahead of it. And not to say it's necessarily better, but I felt so good in that park run. It really did, lock this in as a top tier carbon shoe for me. It just felt very fast, without feeling like I was pushing so much effort into it. It just was helping me along really nicely. And then reducing the speed for the final 5k and it back to marathon pace was great. Obviously the Alphafly just cruised through that first 5k at marathon pace. It really does work very well for that kind of thing. I've also gone all out in the Alphafly over shorter distances. I've done a 5-mile race in it and a 10k race in it, and both times I was genuinely very surprised by how good it was, I have to say. Like, both of the races were in high mileage weeks. I think the 5-mile race was on a Friday night, and I'd done a workout the day before, and I actually did my 5-mile PB in the shoe. And both races I was thinking, I'm starting to tire now, this is going to start feeling a bit too big and cumbersome, but it kind of didn't, I have to say. Like, it still felt propulsive and big, and like it was putting me in the right position to keep running fast at the end of those races, despite the large size of it. However, with that said, I still do think the Endorphin Pro is a little bit better in those short races when you are going all out for a short distance. It does, because it's a bit lighter. It just feels like you can pick up your feet a bit easier and keep pushing towards the end of things like a 5k or a 10k. And whereas the Alphafly, you kind of almost lock into a pace and kind of have to stay there, and it will help you stay there, but as you drop off it, it still feels good, don't get me wrong. Like I say, it felt great in those races, but it doesn't feel like you can really kick in it as easily as picking up in a lighter shoe like this. It's the same actually feeling I had with track workouts in the shoe. I've done short workouts in both shoes, and running hard reps, fast reps, even like 400 meters, they're both really good at it, but the Alphafly almost feels like you build yourself up, lock into a pace and stay there, like a truck speeding up and then powering down a motorway at the same speed the whole way, whereas the Endorphin Pro 3 is more like a sports car. You can very nimble, you can accelerate really well, you can pick up the speed, you can kick hard for home, and you achieve more or less the same thing in both shoes when it comes to racing or reps, but it does seem like you're doing it in a slightly different way. However, then when you do go for those long runs, you can get that kind of locked in feeling with the Endorphin Pro 3. I've done a 22 miler in it during marathon training, and I ran the London Marathon in it at a fairly relaxed pace the week after Berlin, and you can just purr along in it really nice. It's really comfortable. It's more comfortable than I expected actually. Having done some long runs in it, I was worried if I went out hard for things like a 24 miler, it would start to feel a bit harsh underfoot, even with all that cushioning, but it doesn't. Yeah, it rolls through very smoothly, it can hold a pace really nicely, and it disappears in the foot quite nicely, whereas the Alphafly doesn't. But I think of the two, this is my preferred long run shoe. I've done a 20 miler and a hard 24 miler, and it's more comfortable with the Endorphin Pro for sure. It's more protective, and you do just bounce merrily along. And like I say, you just set a pace and you go. And it's more noticeable in this shoe that when you're running, it feels like in your head, your effort would equate to a certain pace. If you look at your watch, it's always a bit quicker in the Alphafly in long runs. You're running better than you think generally, which you don't get quite as much with the Endorphin Pro 3. It still does that, but not quite to the same level. I've also blown up in both these shoes on long runs, and really struggled with them finishing hard. Like again, during marathon training weeks, and at the end of the 24 miler in this, I was just clinging onto a pace, and do think it kind of still puts you in that position where at the end of a long run, even with very tired legs, even with a big shoe like this, it is still helping, and I certainly felt like it was helping me hold on to that kind of target training pace for that 24 miler, whereas when I blew up in this, I feel like over those long distances I start to lose it a bit in the shoe a bit more. So I think, like I say, it's great when you're struggling at the end of a short race. You can just can pick up this light shoe and get to the end. But if you've got like 10k to go of a hard long run and you're starting to really feel it, then the Endorphin Pro 3 doesn't feel quite as good to me as the Alphafly. I think Alphafly really tips you forward a bit more and puts you in the right position just to keep going. Whereas Endorphin Pro does that, obviously. Like I say, they're both great shoes, but not to the same extent. I feel I was rocking back a bit more in this shoe at the end of that hard long run where I did struggle. So another interesting thing I've noticed in the durability wise, I do think the Alphafly 2 feels basically the same as it did in the first run after 150k. Got the same big bouncy feeling, and yeah, the ride hasn't really changed to me. Whereas Endorphin Pro 3, I think, did start to change after about kind of 120k. It softened up actually, and while that creates a more comfortable ride, and it's still a very good ride, I think for all-out pace and at its best, I prefer the firmer feel of when it was a new shoe, and I did have a new one to try to compare, and it certainly felt more firm. Tom's noticed this too when he swapped between a pair of them, and so I don't think you're losing much performance. It's almost a preference in feel, but when I am racing, the slightly firmer feel of a newer Endorphin Pro 3 certainly made a difference to me in how much I liked using it. Now, I haven't used a new pair of Alphafly 2, so it's hard to directly compare the old shoe without a new one there, but in my mind, it hasn't really changed at all, the feel of it, whereas with the Endorphin Pro 3, I did notice it softening up even before I tried the newer one. And then last little note on stability, the Alphafly 2 is more stable than past versions. It's a more comfortable shoe with that wider base. It's reduced that kind of pinching feeling under the foot that some people had with the first version, though there is still a little bit there. I think it's part of the way they jam up into your arches to try and tip you forward and put you in the right position. So it's not an unstable shoe at all. I think it will work well for people on that front. Endorphin Pro 3 has a more natural feel, and it is just naturally quite stable, but there's no massive stability elements to it. Aside from that, it's not quite as all-out soft as some of the carbon shoes in the market. So, like I say, I think these are both really great shoes, and they work very well for all kind of types of fast running. I actually think they're both pretty good training shoes as well. I've said this a lot about the Endorphin Pro 3, and I think it's the best daily trainer you can use if you could afford it. It's very nice at easy paces as well, but you can rack up lots of miles in training with these, which isn't something I necessarily would say so much of something like the Vaporfly, for example. Like just doing tempos in these shoes feels really good. The Alphafly 2 certainly tilts more towards those longer events, whereas the Pro 3 feels like a slightly more versatile shoe. I'm more confident stepping onto the track to do reps in this shoe, or maybe lining up at a 5k. I'd feel, better about wearing the Endorphin Pro 3 over the Alphafly. At the same time, I've done those short races in the Alphafly, and it always surprises me by how good it is. And the Endorphin Pro 3 is a great long-distance racing shoe as well. It'd be a fantastic marathon racing shoe. So there's lots of overlap, but that's probably where I'd say the strengths are. This is a better option for the marathon because I think it's more comfortable, and I think it just helps you keep ticking over in the last few miles of a marathon, whereas Endorphin Pro 3 will do that as well. But yeah, on the shorter races, I think having that lighter shoe on your foot certainly helps when you're kicking, or you're just dragging yourself through the last K, just trying to maintain your pace in like a 5K or a 10K. Alphafly overall is also a stranger shoe. It's a bit uglier, it's a bit much. How this is under the 40mm limit, I don't really understand, because in my UK size 9, it isn't. So I don't know. I know they measure a smaller shoe for that, but it seems like there's a lot of foam there, and it's pushing the limits a little bit, both in terms of looks and design, I think. But it's also much more expensive, which I think is the other big key factor to consider here. Like the Endorphin Pro 3 is a lot cheaper, a lot more normal seeming. I think it will work for more runs. It's a much more accessible shoe. The way it rolls feels quite natural, and I think a lot of people will just get on with it straight away, whereas the Alphafly isn't so accessible. The newer version it's wider than the Alphafly 1 and more stable and that kind of stuff, and it's got a higher drop at 8mm than the original Alphafly, but it still feels strange underfoot. It still feels like it's dictating how it wants you to run, whereas the Endorphin Pro 3 I think fits in with your stride a little bit better. Now, whether you mind that, it really is up to you. But at the price tag, I think it's something that everyone will mind, and that's a big thing in favour of the Endorphin Pro 3. So I'd say if people were coming up to me and asking which carbon shoe should I buy from these two, I would probably lean towards recommending the Endorphin Pro 3, just as I think more people will get on with it. It's cheaper, works really well for a range of distances, works for lots of training, comes in this lovely pink colour. But if it was myself, chips are down, and it was my big goal marathon, I think it's very hard to look away from Nike shoes. I think part of that is a mental block, having used Nike shoes for 5-6 years now as my main racing shoe. I'd probably still lean towards the Alphafly. I think it's got that added comfort, and I think it does work for me better at the end of hard long runs than the Endorphin Pro 3. But very, very close, and at shorter distances, I'd be happier in the Endorphin Pro 3. So, two fantastic shoes. You got either of them, I think you're going to enjoy them a lot, but that's kind of how I rate them. That's it, guys. That's a comparison of the Alphafly 2 and the Endorphin Pro 3. What do you think of these two shoes? Do you like them? We've got loads of comparisons of these shoes to other shoes. So if you're saying, why haven't you compared them to the Vaporfly in this video? It's all in other videos, or watch the full reviews where we'll do loads of verses within the one review. But yeah, this was just about these two shoes. So if you have a preference, let me know in the comments below. Please like, subscribe, ring the little bell, and we'll see you next time.